He was caged, nameless, and moments from being erased, labeled unfit, unstable, and unworthy of love. No one saw the quiet German shepherd's pain. No one questioned why a dog, so still, could carry eyes so loud with sorrow, until a worn-out mechanic, battling ghosts of his own, stood in the crowd and whispered a name the dog had never heard, but somehow recognized. What follows isn't just a rescue. It's a fight against silence, secrets, and the people who wanted this dog to disappear. A story of loyalty, sacrifice, and a bond that defies everything it was meant to be. Before we begin, take a second to like this video and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing your story, too. The metal bars didn't rattle. They didn't need to. In a long row of barking, pacing, panting dogs, one cage sat eerily still. The German shepherd inside didn't snarl, didn't whimper. He just stared. Not at the crowd, not at the floor, but at nothing. It was as if the light in him had flickered out long ago, and the shell that remained was just biding its time. His cage tag read only #K9-47. No name, no story, no chance. And in this holding facility on the outskirts of Millstone, Pennsylvania, no name meant no future. They said he failed the obedience evaluation. They said he snapped once during a drill. Too tense, too stubborn, too dangerous, not adoptable. The words were rubber-stamped on the intake sheet like a death sentence. The workers didn't say his name, not because they forgot it, but because he was never given one. Stay away from that one, a volunteer whispered to a couple passing by. He's a biter. But the truth? No one had ever seen him bite. No one had ever seen him move. The shelter staff treated him like a room that used to be haunted, quiet, but for all the wrong reasons. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't broken. He was just silent. Not the kind of silence that made people lean in, but the kind that made them look away. One worker said he hadn't touched his food in 3 days. Another mentioned he didn't flinch during thunderstorms, sirens, or even when a metal bucket crashed beside his cage. Stillness like that, it wasn't training. It was resignation. And so he made the final list. A clipboard taped to the break room fridge read, K9-47, disposal scheduled, Saturday, 3 p.m. The decision wasn't emotional. It wasn't even personal. It was paperwork. And for the dog in the cage, who didn't even twitch as the janitor swept past with his mop, it might as well have been the end of the world. Or maybe it already had been. What no one noticed was that the cage wasn't empty. It just held something too quiet to measure. Not rage, not fear, but something far deeper, something waiting. Saturday came, cold, overcast. Flyers had been posted across Millstone. Public viewing, retired K9 units, adoption, and decommission. As if these animals were tools being auctioned off for scrap. By 11 a.m., the parking lot outside was packed. Families hoping for one last chance at a good dog. Couples in raincoats holding coffee cups. Shelter staff wore polite smiles. The energy was hopeful, almost festive. Inside, however, the dog in cage, #K9-47, didn't move. He'd been brushed, his coat given a quick wipe down, but nothing about him looked presentable. His ears remained low, his body still like stone. As people passed his cage, they didn't linger. A few glanced at the card. None asked about him, except one man. He walked in late. Grease-stained jacket, calloused hands, face worn from years of something heavier than work. His name was Logan Merrick, and he didn't come looking for a dog. He wasn't even sure why he came at all. But when he passed by that cage and stopped, everything shifted. He stared into the dog's eyes, and the dog stared back. And in that strange, suspended moment, neither of them knew it yet, but something had just started. Something irreversible. Something that would shake both of their worlds. Because in a facility full of barking dogs and desperate hope, Logan Merrick had just locked eyes with the only creature in the building that wasn't trying to be saved. He was just waiting to be remembered. Logan Merrick didn't believe in fate. He believed in bolts that rusted shut, in engines that seized up without warning, and in mornings where coffee tasted like burnt silence. His garage, tucked at the edge of Millstone, had once thrived, back when people needed more than diagnostics and computer resets. Now, it was mostly oil-stained rags and half-spoken promises to no one in particular. He fixed machines, not people, and certainly not himself. That Saturday, he stood in the middle of his shop, staring at a busted carburetor he hadn't touched in 2 days. The flyer had landed in his hands by accident, wedged under his wiper blade at the diner parking lot. K9 Disposal and Transfer, public viewing, this Saturday. Most people wouldn't even glance twice, but something in the words didn't sit right with him. Disposal. That word, it stuck. He didn't grab anything special, just his usual coat, a broken watch, and a gut feeling he hadn't had in years. The ride to the facility was quiet. Rain tapped against the windshield, and the road curved through the outskirts like it wanted to avoid him. He didn't know why he was going. He just went. When he stepped inside the facility, the warmth of the lobby didn't match the cold weight in his chest. Smiling volunteers, clipboards, polite chatter, it all blurred. He walked past dogs who barked and wagged and played their part. Their eyes followed him like a sales pitch. But Logan wasn't buying. Then came the corner cage, the only one that didn't beg, the only one that didn't look up. Something in Logan's stride changed, slowed, focused. It wasn't recognition. It was something worse, familiarity. The dog didn't flinch when Logan stepped closer, just stared, quiet, unreadable, like a photograph no one took, but everyone remembers. A shelter worker, a young man with a stiff clipboard and overused lines, stepped beside him. That one's not for adoption, he said flatly. Failed all behavioral tests. On the final list. Logan didn't respond. He wasn't listening, not to the words anyway. He was trying to understand why this dog felt like looking into a mirror. The dog's coat was thick, but worn in spots. His build was lean, but rigid, like a machine left too long in the cold. There was no tail wag, no tremble, just that gaze. Logan had seen it before, not in dogs, but in people who'd been pushed too far past the edge, and simply stopped asking why. The noise of the room faded. Conversations blurred into a soft background hum. Logan's thoughts, for once, weren't racing. They were just there, still, quiet, like the dog. He didn't even realize he had whispered until the name left his mouth. Axel. It wasn't rehearsed, wasn't planned. But the second it hit the air, something impossible happened. The dog moved. Not a twitch, not a reflex, a full, deliberate turn of the head. The eyes locked onto his. And for the first time since Logan stepped into that building, he forgot to breathe. Axel didn't bark, didn't growl, but the space between them tightened, like gravity itself had turned personal. The worker glanced at Logan, annoyed. "Sir, I told you he's not up for," but Logan stepped forward, barely hearing the words. Something about this moment burned deeper than understanding. Axel hadn't moved for anyone else, not once. And now, he was staring like he'd been waiting all day for one word. No one noticed the look in Logan's eyes, confused, heavy, and filled with something close to fear. Not fear of the dog, fear of what he might have just started. Because as Axel took a slow, careful step forward in that cage, Logan knew this wasn't an accident. This was something buried, something waking up. And for reasons he didn't understand yet, Logan couldn't walk away. Not now, not from him, not from this. It started with a voice, flat, disinterested, echoing from a speaker mounted near the ceiling. "Attention, attendees. The following dogs are no longer eligible for public adoption and have been scheduled for transfer or humane disposal." The words hit like falling bricks. One by one, numbers rolled off a list, cold and sterile. Then it came, K9-47. No name, just a number, as if the dog hadn't even earned a proper goodbye. The worker in charge, clipboard under his arm, moved with the kind of efficiency only indifference could fuel. He marched straight to the cage with the same energy someone might use to toss out broken equipment. When he slid open the lock, the dog didn't fight, didn't flinch. He simply stood and waited. There was no panic, no resistance, just acceptance. And maybe that's what made it worse, watching something once powerful walk toward its end without protest. The crowd barely reacted. Most of them turned their heads, focused on younger dogs with wagging tails and hopeful eyes. People didn't want reminders of what happens when the system fails. They wanted second chances wrapped in happy endings, not broken silence wrapped in shadows. But Logan didn't look away. He stood frozen in place as the handler began wheeling the cage out of the room. And then, like someone had pulled a string in his chest, Logan stepped forward. It wasn't a decision. It was instinct. He didn't raise his voice, didn't make a scene. He simply said the name again, low and certain. Axel. It cut through the noise like a bell. The German shepherd stopped mid-step. His head turned sharply, eyes scanning through the metal bars like he was searching for something he had only heard in dreams. Then he saw him, Logan. The stillness cracked. The dog's body stiffened, ears lifting just slightly. A pulse came alive beneath his ribs, a flicker in the eyes that had been dead just moments ago. The handler noticed. "Sir, back away. This one's not available." But Logan didn't move. His gaze didn't leave the dog's, and the dog didn't blink. A low growl built in Axel's throat, not angry, but cautious, curious, like the sound a lost memory might make trying to find its shape. His paws shifted forward an inch, just one, but it was enough to change everything. "Sir," the handler barked again, now frustrated, ready to escalate. "This dog is unstable. He failed all." "I don't care," Logan said, cutting him off. His voice wasn't loud, but it was unshakable. "He knows his name." That simple sentence pulled attention. People started watching, not all, but enough. Enough to change the temperature in the room. The handler hesitated, visibly rattled. Axel took another step toward the front of the cage. His body no longer looked lifeless. It looked aware, focused, alive, like something buried deep beneath orders and beatings and abandonment had clawed its way back to the surface. He was staring at Logan like the world had narrowed down to one man and one sound. "Let me try," Logan said. The handler shook his head. "That's not protocol." Logan looked him dead in the eyes. "Neither is killing a dog who just remembered how to live." For a second, no one moved. The handler looked around, uncertain, seeking backup that wasn't coming. He finally stepped back, but not before muttering, "Your responsibility." Logan didn't hesitate. He approached the cage, kneeling slowly so he wouldn't tower over Axel. The two locked eyes, closer now, and Logan whispered again, softer, like the name itself was a thread between them. "Axel." The dog inched forward. One step, then another. Then, with no warning, he pressed his head gently against Logan's chest. A gasp rippled through the room. People stopped talking. Some stood with mouths slightly open. Even the handler looked like he'd swallowed his own words. Logan didn't say anything else. He just stayed still, one hand resting lightly on Axel's neck. The moment stretched, quiet, raw, impossibly intimate. The dog wasn't trembling, wasn't growling. He was still peaceful, home. And for the first time in what felt like decades, so was Logan. The air inside the facility had shifted. A moment ago, it was filled with casual conversations, half-hearted questions about breeds and training history. Now it was silent, but not the heavy, sad kind of silence that hangs after bad news. This was the kind of silence that hums with something sacred, something changing. And it was all centered around one man kneeling before one dog, bound by a name that had no past, but somehow meant everything. The handler stood frozen, the leash slack in his hands. Axel didn't move to run. He didn't growl or flinch. He just pressed his head into Logan's chest like it was something he'd done 1,000 times before in a life neither of them remembered. Logan's hands hovered for a moment, unsure, then finally rested gently on Axel's back. The fur was coarse, warm, real. Around them, people whispered. A woman near the front murmured, "That's not possible." He was unresponsive all week. A man behind her added, "They said he failed every test." But Logan didn't hear any of it. And Axel didn't care. For those few seconds, it was just them, no crowd, no clipboard, no death sentence. The shelter director came storming in, clearly having heard the commotion. Mid-50s, a suit jacket too formal for a place full of cages and bleach. He scanned the scene and locked eyes with the handler, who looked as stunned as everyone else. "What is going on here?" the director demanded. The handler stumbled for an answer, gesturing toward Logan and the dog. He He called him by a name, sir. And the dog responded. He came out on his own. The director's expression twisted, more frustrated than impressed. Responded? That's the disqualified canine. He's unstable. He failed obedience, failed aggression control, failed bonding. He's not even chipped under a registered owner. How the hell did he? Logan stood slowly, one hand still on Axel's back. He walked out of the cage. Nobody forced him. The director raised a brow. You do realize what you're asking for? That dog has a file thicker than a phone book. He's been rejected by 3 facilities. He was bred for control, failed every protocol, and attacked a handler in the field. I don't care, Logan replied, voice steady. He knew his name. The room went still again. There was something about the way Logan said it, not defiant, not emotional, but certain, unshakable. The kind of certainty that didn't need approval. The director looked between Logan and Axel, eyes narrowing. We have protocols, liability forms. This isn't a shelter dog. This is a failed unit. Logan said, he's not a unit. He's Axel. The director exhaled sharply and rubbed the bridge of his nose. You want him, he's yours. But don't come back when he turns on you. Don't call us when you can't control him. We warned you. Without another word, Logan reached down. Axel didn't need coaxing. He followed beside him as they walked through the facility. The other dogs barked and paced behind their gates, but Axel walked with quiet steps, never breaking stride. He didn't look back. Neither did Logan. Outside, the rain had started again, soft and cold. Logan opened the passenger door of his truck. Axel paused for a second. Then, with one small jump, climbed in and curled on the seat like he had been doing it for years. Logan stood there for a moment, staring through the windshield. The storm above them rolled low, but inside the truck, something had lifted, something neither of them could name. Not trust, not peace, but maybe the beginning of both. He closed the door, sat behind the wheel, and started the engine. And as they pulled out of that parking lot, Logan didn't know if he had just saved a life or accidentally stitched himself into a story bigger than he was ready for. But he did know one thing. When he'd said the name Axel, something inside that dog had come alive, and something inside Logan had come back from the dead. The drive back to Millstone was wrapped in silence, but not the kind that weighed heavy. This was a silence thick with questions. Axel curled quietly in the passenger seat, body still, but his eyes scanning the world through the window, like it was the first time he'd ever seen trees swaying in the wind. Logan didn't say much either. He didn't know what to say, not to Axel, not to himself. Something had shifted back at that facility. A thread had been pulled, and he wasn't sure what was going to unravel next. By the time they pulled into the lot behind the garage, the rain had picked up. Logan unlocked the side door and let Axel in. The space smelled like oil and cold steel, workbenches cluttered with tools, parts, and leftover coffee cups. A heater rattled in the corner. Nothing about it said home. But Axel didn't hesitate. He stepped inside and settled near the back wall, placing himself where he could see every door, like instinct, like habit. Logan grabbed a crate, flipped it over, and sat down across from him. For a while, neither moved, just quiet, steady breathing filling the space between them. Then Logan, without looking up, said, "You don't act like a dog that forgot how to live." Axel didn't respond, of course, but his ears perked slightly. It wasn't until later that night, as thunder started to rumble across the Pennsylvania sky, that Logan saw the first crack in the dog's armor. The storm grew louder, lightning flashing through the garage windows. The noise didn't startle Axel, but it did something else. He began pacing, not frantically, just tightly controlled, over and over, same circle. Then he stopped, standing in the corner, staring at the wall like he expected it to open. Logan stayed still, watching. Then Axel began to shake, not from cold, not from fear, from memory. Logan didn't move toward him. He just whispered, "It's all right. You're not there anymore." Axel finally sank to the floor, still facing the wall, his body tense, like he was waiting for something to strike. But eventually, slowly, his head lowered to his paws. That's when Logan saw it, a glint of metal deep under Axel's collar, hidden in the fur. A tiny tag, no bigger than a button. He reached out, gently pulling it free. It wasn't a name tag. It wasn't even shelter issued. It was a tracking tag, weathered, with a strange, unfamiliar insignia engraved into the steel. No military code, no microchip registry, just a number. Logan narrowed his eyes. It was clean, but something about it didn't feel right. He stood, crossed to his workbench, and cleaned it off with a rag. That symbol, it looked like a compass with no cardinal points, just a circle with jagged slashes, like a company logo gone rogue. The next morning, Logan took Axel to a small vet clinic just outside Slate Ridge. The place was quiet, tucked between a hardware store and a diner that only opened on weekends. Inside the vet, a middle-aged woman named Dr. Mercer welcomed them with a smile that dropped the second she saw the scar under Axel's rib. She scanned him, ran her fingers over the line. "This wasn't a wound," she muttered. "It's surgical, precise, and recent." Logan's stomach twisted. Why would a shelter dog have something like that? Dr. Mercer looked at him, attention settling in her eyes. Because this dog wasn't meant for adoption. He wasn't meant to leave wherever he came from. When she ran the portable scanner across Axel's shoulder, the device buzzed sharply, then shut off. "Fried," she whispered. "Encrypted." Logan asked, voice sharpening. "Whatever's in this dog," she said, "wasn't just a chip. It was meant to be untraceable." They stood there in the sterile light of the exam room, the hum of equipment filling the space between two people who suddenly realized they were standing on the edge of something dangerous. Logan looked down at Axel, who sat patiently on the tile floor, calm, as if none of this surprised him. The vet leaned closer, voice low. "If I were you, I'd keep him out of sight. And I'd be very careful who you ask about that tag." Logan didn't reply, because deep down he already knew. Axel wasn't a mistake in the system. He was a secret, and someone somewhere was going to want that secret gone. Logan barely slept that night, not because of the storm outside, but because of the storm now brewing in his mind. He sat at his kitchen table, the metal tag from Axel turning between his fingers like a riddle he couldn't solve. The weight of it wasn't physical. It was what it implied. Something about Axel wasn't just tragic. It was classified, hidden, meant to stay forgotten. By morning, Logan looked outside to see a black SUV crawl past the garage. Slow, not lost, just observant. It didn't stop, didn't roll down a window. It just crept down the narrow road and vanished around the bend. But Axel, who'd been sitting near the window, didn't move until it was gone. Only then did he let out a quiet, low growl. Logan stepped outside, eyes scanning the neighborhood. Nothing. Quiet. Too quiet. The kind that feels like a held breath. He needed answers, but asking the wrong people could bring the wrong kind of attention. He thought about going back to the shelter, asking about Axel's intake history, but something told him they either didn't know or weren't supposed to. Instead, he grabbed his truck keys, called Axel over, and headed west toward a place where questions like this didn't raise alarms. An old scrapyard run by a man named Elliot Banks. Elliot used to work defense contracts. Now he mostly fixed wrecked plows and scrapped outdated military gear. He owed Logan a few favors. When Logan showed him the tag, Elliot's face went pale. "Where did you get this?" he asked, without even touching it. Logan hesitated. "Found it on a dog." Elliot leaned closer. "This isn't Army issue. Not even DARPA. This is private rogue. The kind of outfit that spins off from official programs, then goes quiet when someone leaks too much. I haven't seen that symbol in years." Logan frowned. "Who ran it?" Elliot replied, "No one knows who ran it, but there were whispers. Canine behavioral experiments, implant tech, tactical augmentation for dogs that could be trained to do more than the military ever allowed, surveillance, infiltration, the kind of things humans hesitate to do." "And what happened to it?" Logan asked. Elliot's voice dropped. "They shut it down, quietly, after a whistleblower vanished. Not fired, vanished." The word hit like a punch. Vanished. Logan felt something sharp settle behind his ribs. Back at the garage that evening, Logan fed Axel and sat beside him on the floor. "What the hell did they put inside you?" he whispered. As if on cue, someone knocked. Not hard, just 2 slow taps on the back door. Logan stood cautiously. No footsteps, no car pulling away. When he opened the door, nothing, except a manila envelope taped to the wall. He tore it down and stepped inside, heart hammering. Inside the envelope a photo, blurry, grainy, but it was Axel, fully suited in canine armor, standing beside a man whose face was scratched out with a black marker. On the back, in scrawled handwriting, "You weren't supposed to find him." Logan's throat went dry. He looked down at Axel, who now stared at the photo, his body still a stone. And that's when Logan understood. It wasn't just that someone wanted Axel erased. It was that someone had already tried and failed. And now, they knew exactly where to look. The air around the garage shifted. It wasn't just paranoia. It was presence. A quiet hum of something unspoken now lived in the shadows. Logan began checking his locks more than once, started leaving the lights off even during the day. Axel noticed, too. He didn't bark, didn't whine, but his posture changed. He didn't sleep deep. He didn't rest facing walls anymore. He always positioned himself where he could see the door. They weren't being watched. They were being studied. It happened slowly at first. A delivery truck stopped in front of the garage, but never dropped off a package, just idled for 10 minutes before pulling away. Then Logan found a boot print in the dirt behind the storage shed, a place no one had reason to walk near. But the real confirmation came the night Logan heard the gravel behind the building shift. Not a cat, not the wind. Something heavier, purposeful. He stepped outside with a crowbar in his hand. His breath caught cold in the night air. Nothing moved, but Axel stood behind him, stiff as stone, ears locked forward. Then, without warning, Axel lunged toward the left side of the garage and let out a bark. Not just loud, but guttural. The kind of sound you don't ignore. By the time Logan reached the spot, all he found was the edge of a shoe print in the mud and a bent cigarette, still burning on the ground. The message was clear. They'd found them. Logan knew he couldn't keep Axel hidden much longer. So, the next day, he returned to Dr. Mercer, who was already uneasy about what they'd uncovered. He handed her the photo. She took one look and muttered, "You need to see something." She led him to the back room, dimly lit and cluttered with stacks of medical files and discarded equipment. There, she pulled up an older X-ray on her screen, the one from Axel's last visit. She pointed to a small, foreign object buried near the shoulder. "That's not just a chip," she said. "It's encased, shielded. Military-grade tech doesn't even use this anymore. This is private sector hardware, prototype-level stuff." Logan's voice dropped. "What does it do?" She shook her head. "I don't know, but it's encrypted. Your standard readers short out when they touch it. That's not just security. That's concealment. Someone went to a lot of trouble to make sure this thing couldn't be read, removed, or even traced. Whatever's inside that chip, it's meant to stay hidden." She backed away from the screen. "And now it's in your garage." Later that night, Logan sat on the floor beside Axel again. The rain tapped slow and steady on the metal roof, but neither of them noticed. Logan held the envelope in one hand, the photo in the other. "They don't want you because you're dangerous," he said quietly. "They want you gone because you remember something you weren't supposed to survive." Axel, eyes heavy but alert, rested his chin on Logan's knee. They weren't in this mess because Axel was broken. They were in this because someone out there realized he wasn't. That chip wasn't a failure. It was evidence. And now, Logan wasn't just a mechanic with a rescue dog. He was a threat, holding on to a truth that others had already tried to erase. And the longer Axel stayed alive, the more that truth burned. The pieces started falling into place, not with the sound of clarity, but with the weight of dread. Logan drove out to the scrapyard one last time, this time not to ask questions, but to warn Elliot. The man who'd helped him understand the tag might have been the only one outside that vet's office who had any idea what Axel really was. But when he arrived, the gate was already open. Elliot's office door was hanging off the hinge, papers scattered across the floor. No sign of a break-in on the outside, but inside it looked like someone had swept through with precision and speed. There were no signs of Elliot, just the bitter absence of someone who knew too much. Logan didn't say a word on the drive home. Axel lay in the back seat, eyes open the entire ride, quiet, but alert. Always alert now, like his instincts had fully reawakened, like the soldier in him had never really left. When they returned to the garage, Logan found the lights already on. He always shut them before he left. He reached slowly for the crowbar behind the door. Axel was already crouched low to the ground, body rigid. Logan nodded once. Axel moved without a sound, slipping through the side of the garage like a shadow. Logan stepped around the front and froze. There, standing by his workbench, was the last person he expected. Jared, the janitor from the facility. But something about him was different. He wasn't holding a mop or pushing a bucket this time. He was wearing tactical boots, plain jeans, and in his hand was a flash drive. "I had a feeling you'd be here," Jared said, voice calmer than it had any right to be. "Or they would." Logan didn't lower the crowbar. "You following me?" Jared didn't answer that. He just held out the drive. "This has everything," he said. "The program, the experiments, the termination orders, and what they did to the dogs that didn't obey." Logan's heart hitched. "Axel." Jared nodded. He was one of the best until he hesitated, disobeyed a direct command to attack. There was a civilian in the crossfire. He held back, saved her. He paused. That made him a liability. Logan took the drive slowly. Jared backed away, like he was finished. But before he left, he looked down at Axel, who had stepped into view, eyes burning like wildfire. They didn't expect him to survive. And they definitely didn't expect someone like you to pull him out. The door closed. Jared was gone. Logan slid into his desk chair and opened the drive. What he saw made his hands tremble. Files, documents, test logs, video footage. In one clip, Axel's handler screamed commands. In another, explosions sounded in the background. And in one haunting video, Axel stood frozen between two targets. One combatant, one innocent. The combatant raised a weapon. Axel chose the harder target, saved the innocent, and in the next frame, his handler slammed him to the ground. Below the footage was a report. Unit K9-47, compromise judgment, schedule for decommissioning. They didn't care that he made the right choice. They cared he made his own. Logan shut the laptop, fingers clenched. Axel was beside him now, sitting tall, not a dog waiting for a treat, not a pet waiting for affection, but something stronger, a survivor standing beside the one man who had seen his worth. They weren't out of danger. If anything, they just lit a fire someone else would want to put out. But Logan knew something now, something unshakable. Axel had done everything right. He'd been punished for choosing to protect life instead of destroy it. And maybe, just maybe, that decision, that one act of disobedience, was the most human thing anyone in that entire program had ever done. Logan rested his hand on Axel's back. "You didn't fail," he whispered. "They did." And in that moment, the garage didn't feel like a hideout anymore. It felt like a war room, because now Logan had the truth, and more importantly, he had the dog who lived to tell.